page 4 of the Business Daily this morning. Also, Uganda bans sports betting. You saw that on the headline yesterday on the front page of the Daily Monitor. Uganda has banned sports betting, dealing a blow to local firms like SportsPesa. The country's finance minister David Bahati said President Yoweri Museveni had ordered that no new sports betting company should be licensed. This story continues on page 5 of the Business Daily. Today's digit is 442 billion shillings. This is the amount allocated to education for the next financial year in proposed budget. You have the full scoop of this on page 12 of the Business Daily. Safaricom invests in cybersecurity. Safaricom has moved to diversify its business portfolio with the launch of a cybersecurity solution targeted at Kenyan firms looking to protect their information and communications technology. This is the ICT systems. You can follow this story on page 7 of the Business Daily. And Eurobond yields defy terrorism. Yields on Kenya's Eurobonds fell last week as Nairobi's terror attack failed to cow international investors who have cut the risk rating on the country's debt this year. This story continues on page 19 of the Business Daily this morning. We cross over now to Tanzania and we pick up the Citizen. Customers to pay more to access bank services is what is on the front page of the Citizen. If you're waking up in Tanzania this morning, in what looks like an apparent response to the situation, most banks have adjusted their fees and charges upwards between 30 and 50% on a number of services and products as they seek to garner more cash into the fees and commissions into stream to bolster profits. This story is well fleshed out for you on page 2 of the Citizen this morning. Also, fate of Lissu's seat to be known next week. That is what is also the front page of the Citizen. Bunge Committee grills CAG Assad for 2 hours and 36 minutes. This also continues on page 3 of the Mwananchi or the Citizen in Tanzania. Mwananchi is up next. And this is a splash. Ndugai, Lissu asubiri muziki wangu. This is a splash that you want to follow. Also, kamati ya bunge ya mhoji CAG dakika 156 Dodoma. You can follow that story on page 4 of Mwananchi. Let's cross over to Uganda and see what the Daily Monitor is holding for us today. Students stranded as Makerere staff strike starts. VC says striking dons can stay home forever. Solidarity? The university staff says they will not step in the lecture rooms unless the suspension of some of their colleagues for alleged indiscipline is lifted. This story continues on page 5 of the Daily Monitor in Uganda. And also, in the dock, we can see here, Kanyamunyu trial adjourned indefinitely. Suspect in the murder case of child rights activist Kenneth Akena, Matthew Kanyamunyu, and Cynthia Munwangari at the High Court in Kampala yesterday. This story continues on page 8 of the Daily Monitor this morning. We cross over now to Rwanda, where we have the New Times, and this is what is a splash today. Rwanda, Morocco to partner in digital court program. Rwanda and Morocco will today sign a raft of agreements for partnership in the justice sector, including collaboration on the latter's implementation of the digital court project. Moroccan Justice Minister Mohamed Aoujar is leading a delegation from the North African country on an official visit to Rwanda. The two ministers are set to sign a memorandum of understanding for partnerships in the justice sector. This story continues on page 4 of the New Times if you're waking up in Rwanda this morning. Let's see finally what we have also on the front page of the East African. Allow me just to lift that for you quickly. And this is what is headlining the front page of the East African this week. It's all about terrorism, the changing face of terrorism in East Africa. That is what is a splash today. Exporting risk, returnees, sleeper cells now being used to attack regional targets. The story continues on page 8 and 9 of the East African this week. And you can see here a picture of Kenyan security agents protecting civilians at the scene of a terrorist attack in Nairobi's Westland suburb on January the 15th. Also, new dawn for regional relations is a abiding question on the front page of the East African. Burundi ready to attend Feb 1st summit. Mfumukeko promises greater integration. And this story continues on page 4 of the East African this week. Also, drone pilot who is saving lives in Zanzibar. Find all about Khadija Abdullah Ali who is leading efforts to map the ISIL. Also, Uganda plans one-off license fee for insurers. This will be introduced in 2020. It will enhance risk monitoring. It's on the business segment, page 31. Also, no share buybacks for listed Kenyan firms. Regulators in abrupt bounce stand over concerns about liquidity. This story continues on page 41 of the markets. That's a pull-out also inside the East African. And the magazine, the dethroning of Buganda Kingdom, is a cover story. New queen of Katwe, Gloria Nasubuga, who is 16, becomes a fine master. You can follow that story on page 5 of the pull-out magazine. That is the outlook inside the East African for you as well. I'll show you the editorial cartoon much later in the course of the program. But for now, let's swing for the fences by looking at the highlights. Arrest and arraignments in the Riverside drive attack as families commit to cooperate. In Congo, protesters banned tires after opposition meeting was blocked by police. In Zimbabwe, court says internet shutdown illegal as more civilians detained. 3 young men in the list of most wanted terror suspects surrendered to police in Isiolo County after the images were released by the police. Their parents claim they are innocent and have been assisting the government with information since 2017 after being intercepted by anti-terror police unit while crossing to Somalia. 4 more suspects were arraigned in court yesterday in connection to last Tuesday's 14 Riverside complex terror attack.
Hata tangu mwaka hiyo iliyopita ilishikwa mpaka saa hii kotini inaendelea. Na hakuna kitu, hata ile kitu wameona naye. Hata shahidi inakuja kuona kwa hiyo kotini hakuna. Hata hiyo watu wameshika wenyewe wakuji.
Ilionyeshwa ndani ya TV wanted. Unaona? Saa hiyo tu akasema mimi sina kitu chochote ndani, siogopi chochote. Leo akafika saa 7 hapa kwa serikali. Akakuja baka kwa serikali, saa hii ako kwa antitera hapa.
And 4 people were last injured in an attempted attack on a Chinese road. That is last night, the day before, actually yesterday, on a Chinese road construction site in Shimbirei, about 50 kilometers from Garissa town. Confirming the injuries, County Police Commander David Kerina, who was among the top security officials who visited the scene, said swift response by the police on receiving tips of the attack helped save lives. According to terrified locals who spoke to the media on condition of anonymity, 8 hooded militants, all armed with AK-47 rifles, kidnapped a man from a nearby village and ordered to take them to the Chinese construction site camp. As they approached the camp, they allegedly started shooting indiscriminately, prompting the workers who are housed outside the fenced camp to scatter for safety. Police say security officers guarding the camp returned fire and in about 15 minutes were able to repulse the militants who fled to nearby thicket during the shootout. The wife of one of the security guards manning the gate was shot from behind and a bullet is said to be lodged in her shoulder. She was rushed to the Garissa County Referral Hospital where she is admitted and in stable condition. The other 3 were injured as they scampered for safety, including the husband to the injured woman. The police say they are pursuing the militants who allegedly escaped on foot towards the Dab area.
Watu 8 ambao walikuwa wamejihami silaha kali ndio wameingia. Hiyo watu vile waliingia hawakufaulu. Askari ambao walikuwa tayari alert ndio walipata na walifukuzwa.
Nilisikia risasi zimeanza kulia na kusikia hizo risasi zikilia, mimi nilitoroka kuingia kwa msitu. Hata saa hii ndio nimekuja hapa.
The members of the National Ghana Owners Association will be the only ones exempted from carrying a special chipped card that the Ministry of Interior has introduced as an addition to documents needed by a licensed civilian gun owner. This will be the status quo until a case they have against the government in court is heard and determined. Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i says the new card will capture and contain all the information about the holder and the licensed weapon.
I hope that by the grace of God, by 18th of March, because I have not revised the dates of the moratorium, every licensed firearm holder will have this card. And when the police commander, for example, in the region, requires you to produce this card because you hold a firearm, you must produce it, because this is how we get all the details we need on every firearm, licensed firearm holder.
And top security chiefs in the country are meeting in the wake of the latest security breach by terrorists. The meeting has been called for purposes of sharing an in-depth status update on security.
I am effectively briefed of what the DCI has been doing. I am so satisfied that we are on course to unraveling that matter effectively.
You need to be in touch with the people on the ground from the media houses and to see how best to interact and provide the information that you will need.
We will be forthcoming and share information as much as possible, and we will work to support you. So we not only want to benefit from the work you do, but we would also like to be supportive to the work that you do.
As part of the ongoing reforms and the transformation in the National Police Service, we have made changes that were envisaged in our plan announced by His Excellency the President in September of last year.
Now, Education Cabinet Secretary Amina Mohammed says the government has achieved over 80% transition to secondary schools for those who sat their Kenya Certificate of Primary School exams last year. The Cabinet Secretary, who monitored the implementation of the competence-based curriculum in Nakuru, says her ministry is optimistic it will achieve 100% transition by end of January. She did not, however, address the financial constraints that could be keeping the 20% from transitioning to secondary school.
Here we have now the next one. These are
For us right now, I think the most urgent priority is to make sure that we achieve the 100% transition, so that no child is at home who should actually be in class, right? The books are there, they're ready for them, the teachers are ready to teach, and so we want to make sure that everybody is in class learning.
Now, the Council of Governors is furious with the Controller of Budget. Reason? She has released a report showing that most governors had not set aside money for development in the first quarter after the election in 2017. Council of Governors Chairman Wycliffe Oparanya says the report is erroneous, arguing that counties did not receive cash from the Treasury on time in the first place.
Yes. And I think you will be hearing more from the Control of Budget.
As you read that report, which I saw yesterday being discussed, you have to look at the wider macroeconomic factors which are affecting collection of taxes, and therefore the inability of national government to disperse money within the set schedule within that same period.
The fact that we had just an election the other year, there was a delay in disbursement of funds. And the funds started coming in October, when obviously the first quarter was over. The first quarter ends at the end of September. So since the money came in October, there was no expenditure on development the first 3 months.
Kwa hivyo baada ya kuzunguka na kuandika maripoti ya uongo kusema hakuna kazi tumefanya, Treasury watoe pesa. Treasury watupatie sisi county pesa zetu. Si pesa tunaomba, ni ile pesa tumepatiwa na katiba. Tafadhali tembeeni Meru. Ongeeni na MCA wetu. Wamuonyeshe ile barabara wamefanya na World Development Fund. Tembeeni muone ile maji Bwana Mutuma amechimba Meru hii 100 boreholes kwa mwaka moja. Hiyo si mchezo. Zungukeni muone watoto wakinywa maziwa katika Meru. I think that alone is evidence kwamba tunafanya kazi.
and we shall be delving deeper on, of course, the politics of the week that has been so far. And what is headlining the front pages of our dailies today as well? Looking at the matters academia, this is what is headlining the front page of a Daily Nation. If you missed this at the top of the hour, crisis as ministry delays cool cash. Also, on the front page of a Standard, this should be also a basis of our discussion. Radical proposal for powerful PM referendum submission so far to the Building Bridges Initiative suggests proposal to overhaul governance system in popular and gathering steam. This is on page 8 of the Standard this morning. And the Star, here is an admission from Amina. This is my toughest job yet. Education CS says work is full of challenges, but she is ready for them. CS explains why also D+ students should teach your children. This and a raft of other issues that we'll be discussing here. You can head over to our Twitter handle, which is AMLiveNTV. Also, AMLiveNTV is a profile name on Facebook, and 20686, our SMS portal. Allow me to introduce our panelists this morning. I had done that also at the top of the hour with Aaron Cheriot. And also joining us this morning is Jacome Diwo, who is a former Member of Parliament for GEM, and also we do have the former Senator of Kakamega, Boni Halwale. We have Senator Kimani Matangi with us, Senator of Kiambu. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Right. First of all, I think I'll be remiss if I don't also give you this opportunity to just, pay your, tributes this morning for the people who were attacked last week, lives that were lost. So you can actually share your condolences and your deepest sympathies for the family. Let's just begin with you, Aaron Cheriot.
Well, thank you, Debarl, and good morning to our viewers. Indeed, I agree with you that it's important that we pay tribute to, first of all, send a message of condolence to the Kenyans that we lost and those of our other nationalities. The very unfortunate incidents that happened last week on Tuesday, and the many people that we lost as a country. It's really unfortunate. Personally, I do not know more than perhaps one or two people. I know a gentleman that we used to play soccer with on most weekends who passed on in that attack, a young man who used to work at LG company. And it's really unfortunate, very young family having to disappear in such circumstances, but such is life. After it has happened, there's very little that we can do, save for the fact that we appreciate also our security forces, that this time, unlike in previous situations where we've been as a country, the response was exceptionally good, well organized, and saved so many people. Otherwise, had it been as disorganized, maybe we would have been talking of more casualties. So we would wish to really appreciate our men and women of uniform who go out into danger in such situations, as the rest of us are praying that our families quickly get out of such situations. There are young men and women who are actually walking in to harm's way, trying to make our country more peaceful. Special tribute goes to this gentleman called Japheth Ndugunja Nuru, a young 27-year-old from Taveta County, a GSU officer who died during this operation, left a young family. I think the government should find a way of ensuring that his young family is properly settled. Such gallant men who die so that the country may be peaceful should not just be left without, their families shouldn't be left to suffer such consequences. In more mature countries and democracies, they are celebrated and given a place of honor, and the state ensures that their families are stable, if only to lessen the burden of the loss of the loved one. In conclusion, Debarl, I think time has come for us as a country to discuss this issue of religious fundamentalism.
Yes.
We look at it, we look at religious fundamentalism only in the sense of Islamic terrorists. But the truth of the matter is that almost all religions are affected right now. I do not think that, despite the fact that our constitution provides for freedom of religion and that kind of a thing, it doesn't mean that anyone can do anything. Even within those of us, for example, that profess the Christian faith, we know of certain practices where they may not kill your kin, but they leave you with people who are walking dead. because you find very nice people, fine journalists, military officers, or even up to university dons and lawyers. The minute they join certain, some of these, quote unquote, I do not consider them to be churches, they are as good as dead to you because they're no longer useful to the family. They only associate with members of that church. I think time has come, and I want to urge our president, if possible, to set up a commission of inquiry to look into the menace of religious fundamentalism in this country. We shouldn't just be allowing every Tom, Dick, and Harry to open up a church and mislead our people. So many people are being swindled of their property. Young families are being broken. People that you know, you yourself as media, you have highlighted cases countless times of people who've set up religious institutions only to swindle money from people. And all they do is that they go under the weather for about 2 or 3 years. Before you know it, like one gentleman I know, you remember the story that you aired about, I can't remember what the exact name of his church was. I've seen he's again set up another church. The
Kanyari story.
Not Kanyari. I think helicopter or something.
The helicopter, yes.
Yes. You remember that investigation?
Yes,
that gentleman has set up another church. And I can see all they do is that they hide for 2 to 3 years. And
they wait for it to taper off, yes.
They've showed up. I don't think that religious freedom means that we allow crooks and conmen to con people. In my own county, early towards the end of last year, there is a specific denomination where members of that congregation sacrificed other members of the congregation.
Maybe we should go the rundown way of licensing the churches as well.
Yes,
right? So the churches are vetted, and if you have some churches which, you know, they're actually projecting some of very dubious doctrine, then they're not given licenses as well.
I totally agree with that directive.
Because rather they've taken that measure.
Yes.
Thank you. Let's just hear also from Jacob Dio this morning as well. Good morning.
Good morning, Debarl.
Yes.
Debarl, I agree with everything my colleague has said. But, Debarl, the first thing we need to do, Israel, except for Palestine, they don't fight beyond their borders. I think Kenyan forces need to come back home. we need to let us face the facts. I think this Somali thing.
And what are the facts?
The facts are, number one, our soldiers are trading in charcoal. They are enjoying that luxury of being in Somali. In fact, the last major attack before this one was that our people were attacked away from the frontier. So I think we need to bring our people home. We said we were going to Operation Linda Inchi. Operation Linda Inchi, in my view, does not mean occupying Somalia, in my view. And I think we need to bring our forces back home and create a proper frontier where the terrorists cannot come here. Yeah. But what we are doing today, we are trying to occupy a country without proper definition. And I don't think we have that capacity. I mean, if the Americans have run away, they are pulling from Syria and everywhere. Who are we? Let us bring our people home. Let us say let us define our borders. And our borders, defining our borders means we don't occupy another country. And we need to move away from Kismayo. Because where are the definitions? Why is this issue so foreign to the definition of parliament? Why is it not so easy to define what our borders are? I want to congratulate our intelligence, because I think the Honorable Senator has said men and women in uniform, but I think our intelligence is so airtight. I think we are doing the best. That we defined, and Honorable Halwale, I want to send my sympathies to you because it caught you. But that we could we could respond within 8 minutes. To me, I think that's a cool thing.
Thank you.
We did so much as intelligence that the military and the police and everybody could go there within 8 minutes.
Thank you.
That is good. That is good intelligence, and we must congratulate them.
Thank you.
But I think we're in the wrong place.
Thank you.
We have no business occupying our neighbor's country.
So has it really turned to be a military occupation, given that we don't really have an exit strategy? Let's hear also from Boni Khalwale.
From the very bottom of my heart, I want to say pole to the victims of this heinous attack by terrorists. As Kenyans know, my daughter was there because she works with the Commission of Revenue Allocation, and they were right there. And for the whole period, from 3:10 in the afternoon, when she called me, up to 4:30 a.m. in the morning, when she finally was evacuated, was an experience for us of hell on earth. May I take this opportunity to congratulate the security forces, led by two men I met there. One is the commander of the GSU, Mr. Douglas Kanja, and the OCS of Mudangari, Mr. Mike Lekaleide. These were the people who were on the front line in commanding that operation, and I couldn't believe it. The moment I was on TV saying that I was there, because my daughter was in there, there are many people who thought I was doing something which was not right. I wanted to be there so that Kenyans know that everybody, you can be a former senator, a doctor like myself, but you are an ordinary human being, that we are all the same. And I wanted for it to be clear that the pain Kenyans were feeling, I was feeling it like them. And these guys, when they picked it, quickly the commander raised me, took my telephone number, took my daughter's telephone number, and every time we would hear a round of gunshots and grenades being detonated, he would, after 5 minutes, call me and tell me that the hostages are still fine. And what touched me most is that when Mike, the OCS of Mudangari, when he then went to the office of the Commission of Revenue Authority, he shouted my daughter's name and called her out, Zinzi, I'm out here. Your father has told me to come up, because they were afraid to open. So Zinzi then opened the door because I had told her that a police officer will call you, out. It was a big experience for us. I want to say pole for the young police officer from GSU. I believe his name is Tutu from Taveta, who lost his life. Also from my home in Shinyalu, Derek Limesi, son of Sakaria Amsala, also lost his life. We will be hopefully burying him this weekend, and people are feeling very bad. Now let me come to issues. The first issue is that 2.5 years ago, and I'm glad Senator Amatangi is here, I brought on the floor of the House, of the Senate, the issue of the increase in the number of youth who were joining Al-Shabaab. Chariot, you remember. And I was given a list of the number of youth from each county who have joined. And it was significant that the counties leading were Nyeri and Kakamega. And in Kakamega, it was specifically children from a sub-county called Shinyalu. So I want to call upon the security organs to ask themselves, who is this who is behind recruitment of our youth into the Al-Shabaab? And the pattern is very clear. If we don't speak to it, we are pretending. the pattern is clear that these children do not go and join Al-Shabaab on day one. They first join Islam, wherever they are. They are converted into Muslims, and after becoming Muslims, they end up in Mombasa, and before you know it, they are in Somalia. So we have to speak to the issue of the role of religion in terrorism. We used to say in medical school that if you see a four-legged animal running on a race course in Ngong, you are more likely to be right if you said that animal was a horse than saying it was a donkey. Because the animals that race in Ngong, four-legged animals, are horses. So when we fear to say that there are Muslims who are promoting terrorism in this country, we are pretending that they are not four-legged animals racing in Ngong. We have to start from there. And what is so difficult, Kenyans, the government can actually put listening devices in mosques and in churches, and hear that imam, that priest who is speaking to radicalization. No. And quietly, the fellow is evacuated. Finally, there is the issue of the preparedness of the security organs. Who are the first people to be in contact with this kind of thing? They are our security guards. It is still too early to conclude, but I think the government must be supported in making sure that security guards are armed with the heavy weapons. If you fear to do this because there will be abuse, you're assuming that not everybody will be given an opportunity to have those weapons. I expect that the people on the first line, who are these security guards, will be vetted properly so that they are properly armed, and when they respond to save people, rather than standing there with rungus. They are actually sitting ducks.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
I think on that note, we'll take a short break. Then when we circle back, we begin with Kimani Matangi also to pay his tribute as well. And we continue the conversation looking at that. Also, broaching the issue of our military in Somalia. Boots on the ground, still there. More than 5 years. Is it really turning out to be a military occupation? Of course, the president has been very categorical that, yes, we'll not take out our military from Somalia until peace is restored in that country. But at what cost? Like, we'll actually be looking at this and after the other issues on the other side of a break. Don't go away. Also, you can cross over to a Twitter handle right now, which is AMLiveNTV, AMLiveNTV, your profile name on Facebook, and 20686 our SMS portal. See you on the other side of a break. Welcome back. You're watching People and Politics here on AM Live, and we continue with the conversation with our panelists. We'd promised to circle back with Kimani Wamatangi also to pay his tribute. Kimani Wamatangi, good morning.
Yeah, morning, Debarl. Let me also take the opportunity first to say good morning to our viewers, and then also secondly express my very sincere condolences to all those that, the families that lost their loved ones, and wish a quick recovery, definitely, to all those who are still undergoing therapy, those that are still undergoing treatment and counseling. I remember receiving a call yesterday from a close friend of mine, and told me that she's still undergoing counseling after the trauma of that attack. As my colleagues also have done, I think it is in order for all of us to commend the improved and better manner in which this attack was handled by our men in uniform all the way around, from all the sections of our police, military, intelligence, and also the GSU that handled this matter. I think this time it was a lot much more better, but we hope that in future, to show how good we have become, there will be no more attacks. I mean, we'll be better at deterring them than dealing with them when they've happened. Just a few things, Debarl, that I may want to mention. First is, remember, in the United States of America, since the time when that young man called Timothy McVeigh drove a truck bomb into
Oklahoma.
Yes. It was unbelievable then. Very few people, in fact, remember the president of the United States then was at pains to explain to the people of America that it is one of their own who had killed so many in that Oklahoma bombing. And I think this is now the concern that we are starting to face. That an attack like that one that happened at Dusit 2 would happen with all 6 terrorists involved, and 100% of them being Kenyan. That nowadays we don't need to have anyone crossing the border to come and terrorize Kenyans to that scale, and with such impunity, and of course determination to murder. And some of the questions, Debarl, that would be going to our minds are, at what point have our young people made such a big departure from patriotism that they are willing to be recruited to blow themselves up in public and kill other people? Born here, bred here, grown up here, with Kenyan names, some of them, of course, having changed them according to faiths they've joined. And I note the point made by Senator Halwale. But I think this is something that we really need to first address if we have to go to the root of this problem. You see, Debarl, if you look at a bit of the history of terrorism, and I would probably, when you're free, read a book called God's Terrorist, and then you can get a bit of background into how this thing has mutated up to where we are today. And you know, terrorists then have since innovated. They have been very innovative. You know, remember before then, when they were bombing streets and cafes in Israel, they would plug bombs into their own bodies, go and blow themselves up. They evolved into IEDs, where that they detonate when they are away to kill people, and they have done this here in Kenya. They evolved to cyber terrorism, so that they can bring a country to its knees, just using cyber technology. And then they have also gone ahead to evolve to realize that in our minds we have always thought that a terrorist has got to wear a turban and a long beard. And so it is an intended strategy that they now go to local grounds. If they want to come and mess up with Kenya, they will come here and look for the agents here locally. And so let's not be surprised once you hear that some of those names were Geshunge, Kemunto, and others. If we don't watch it out, you'll be hearing other, Otienos and Kamaus and Wanjirus and Halwales. What's happening, Debarl, is the terrorists have been very cleverly, they have managed very cleverly to draw a nexus between disillusionment, between disempowerment of our youth, between loss of vision and empowerment, and then that cause of terrorism. And that's why it's very easy for them to get these people. And I believe that's one of the things that we really need to address as a country, ask ourselves, how are we going to make sure that we don't have candidates sitting right in our sitting rooms, waiting to be recruited, and hearing what you're saying and knowing that tomorrow they're going to kill your own brother who is a neighbor and working in a place like where they're working. Secondly, probably, in terms of preparedness, and I agree that we did a lot much more better, but we should ask ourselves, have we made the mile such that we've closed the gap as much as we could in ensuring that we deter terrorists from actually being able to carry out. And one of the interesting pieces I read when I was following this story was actually that some or most of the bullets, some of the magazines, grenades that were used during this attack had actually been ferried prior and stored in that hotel, so that all the terrorists needed to do was to come, gain access, and their armor was already safely stored. You don't know whether a week or two before. And so you'd be asking a fundamental question, really. What is the skill and level of our not only preparedness, but alertness, vigilance all the time? And Debarl, I've decried this in many forums when I speak about this. Because right now, if you go to any institution now, including probably here, after this, maybe you'll be called for a drill to go and practice how you'd handle terrorists if they attacked and so on. That's what we do all the time as a country. And then within a month or two, the story fades, and then we are back to business as usual. And there are no set standards or a code that this is standard practice all the time. And so once you look at, for example, the attack there, you'd be asking ourselves, yes, did we need to lose the 21 lives? Would we have done better? And probably, I think we need to ask ourselves, and more so, Debarl, say that we understand we have done a lot, we appreciate, but one fundamental thing also we have to do is to invest much more in deterring terrorism using technology. And let me just make a final one, because I had a very curious incident sometimes when I traveled abroad in one of the countries. And I drove all the way from my hotel, straight to the airport, straight checked in, straight to the aircraft. And I asked, hey, what's happening? I thought I would be stopped here, you check my bags, you do one. Everything is digital. By the time you are crossing to enter into the airport, they have screened your bags as you are crossing the vehicle you have come in, you push your trolleys inside. By the time you are getting there to give out your boarding pass on your phone, they're done with you. And this is a first world country. And so what you'd be asking yourself is if we have these guys coming from Runda here, from Ruaka, from the other place, how much more can we do if we invest in technology? Can I just touch a little bit on what Bonnie said?
Hold on to that. We'll come to you. Okay. But I wanted just to come back to Senator Cheriot, because you also raised the issue of some of the families that are affected after maybe some of his war heroes and the people like who have been very heroic and fighting terrorism in this country, and they've been felled by the terrorists as well. I was wondering what sort of compensation that really comes after that. Is there, because we've never had any a bill that is coming also from the August House and the Senate as well, in terms of a veterans bill. Look at what happened to El Ade. Some of the families even right now, they don't know where some of the soldiers that they were captured are until now. We don't even have the specific numbers, of course, of the soldiers that were actually fell in El Ade because of security reasons. But yet, when we see with the developing countries, we even have memorials which are listing some of these fallen soldiers as who, they died during war, and having those heroic feats as well. What then can we do in terms of the veterans bill and how we can actually take care of our veterans?
I totally agree with you, Debarl, that perhaps we need to have a better way of, first of all, celebrating such heroes as David Nduguja, the gentleman that I had mentioned earlier, the 27-year-old GSU officers. And I think it's an area of interest that will be to me. I commit to check and ensure, because I think probably we have left it only to the management of the security apparatus of this country to look into it and see the ways in which they can compensate families of such officers. But I think we need actually to set, because now these are becoming more of common occurrence, you know, where you have officers who, in the line of duty, say an officer who's pursuing criminals, it doesn't even have to be a terrorist, for example. If you have thugs who raid a public place, and you have a gallant officer who goes out of the way, and while in trying to contain the situation, they lose their life. How is it as a country that you ensure that such officers, at least their families, because most of the times these are people who are very young families. How do we ensure that they are cushioned? To be sincere, I don't think we have legislation that takes care of this, and this is something that I commit to undertake and just do what needs to be done, because as you have said, societies keep on evolving, and one area which our society hasn't fully evolved in is communication in terms of security operations. This one was a bit better. I saw the AG briefing us almost after an hour or so, and with each set of briefing, though he was cautious in his wording, he would reveal extra information, you know, at every time of briefing. Unlike previously in the past, where police will just give standard drafted messages. Like they had one standard message that will always be just read out, you know, that this is what happened. The world over, when you give out information, it gives power to the message that you're sending. And I have said this previously on our show, that how we handle our security sometimes, to the sense that how we communicate, it's still archaic, and it needs to conform to the times that we are living in. What is so secret, for example, and I have asked this previously on our show, that how we conduct our billing or budgeting of, for example, our security issues. What is so secret about it? What is secret about a G3 rifle that a police officer will be carrying on the street? That every time we are procuring it, it has to be shrouded under some cloud of mystery, you know, and all that thinking of saying that security matters should never be discussed in public. I agree with you. It is good to name these officers, let it be known. These are the officers that took part in, you know, this kind of things. These are the people we lost. There's absolutely nothing wrong in revealing. Even the details, for example, that Jacoyo was speaking about us getting out of Somalia. I agree with him 100%. Let us do a valuation or an analysis of what is it that we are getting out of our men and women being in Somalia, as opposed to us getting them out. How much has been spent so far? You'll be shocked that it runs into the billions of shillings. Had we used the same to ensure that we secure our borders using modern technology, it would have costed far less than what you're spending, and we wouldn't be losing the kind of lives that we are using. I mean, if your neighbor has problems, there's only so much that you can do as a neighbor. I think, to me, we have reached that point with Somalia. We have really gone out of our way. We have assisted where it is possible. It's time to bring back our troops home and ensure our borders are safe, just like countries like Israel that live around very hostile areas do. Your first point of call should be ensuring that your borders are safe. Now it has been proven 3, 4, not once, not twice, not thrice, that being in Somalia doesn't leave us safe. While we were in Somalia, Al-Shabaab actually came into Kenya and indoctrinated our own. This attack was coordinated and executed 100% by Kenyans. Yes. It's good time that we bring our troops home and ensure that we handle the issues at home. Finally, Debarl, there's just something that was mentioned last week in all this discussion that I want to make a point on. This issue of arming private security guards, I am opposed to it 100%. Right. I can never agree to it.
Hold on to it. We'll broach it. We'll broach it. Just hold on to it, because we need to also just go sequentially with what we're talking about. You raise also a very critical comment on or issue on the critical appraisement of us being in Somalia so far. We need to do a self-evaluation. The question that also might be asked is, then if the radicalization is actually taking the upper reach in terms of terrorism, why can't we then soften on the hard power approach that we have in Somalia and concentrate on the soft power approach? of de-radicalization and maybe strengthen the programs that we do have with a National Counterterrorism Center as well. Chakoyo.
Well, first of all, let me tell Honorable Senator Cheriot that the boy he's saying they used to play football with.
Odu.
That Odu boy is the son to my brother-in-law. So he's the one who was killed. I saw his story. He's a hero.
Our condolences.
We will bury him, I think, in a few days. But why are we in Somali, Debarl? Why is Uganda not being attacked, or Tanzania? You know, now that it is after the fact, bring our troops back. Please. Why are we? The other day I was in my office here on Baricho Road. I saw an army ambulance buying tools. Soldiers are trading with the government. We have to do something as a country. First of all, let us change our recruitment formulas. Depoliticize army and police recruitment. I know for a fact, because I was in the Intelligence Committee of Parliament in the last Parliament. I know they're the best. And in fact, I can vouch that they're one of the best in the world. That's how they got there in 8 minutes. But I think the way we recruit our military, if you are Boni Halwale or Wamatangi or Cheriot, a month does not pass without somebody calling you, I am in the northern frontier, bring me back to Nairobi. Because he is not willing to take care of my country. He wants to be safe, but he should be protecting me. And that takes a lot of conviction. Takes a lot of conviction. They should not, the people we take to our military and the police should not be cowards. And that is what we are faced with as a country. That's what we are faced with. I personally think that our country must, without a leeway, depoliticize the way we recruit people in the military. And we need to take, we need to look at who is in this military and who is in the police and who is in the intelligence. There's nothing, there should be nothing to fear about the people to protect us. We must give them the confidence, and they must not be strangers to us. I personally think that our issues are nearly done, and I'm so impressed by the intelligence. I am so thankful and grateful to the police force for what they did last week, but I think we can do better.
Right, Pune Khalwale.
I think my colleagues have summed it up, but I would like to add the following. That there is a difference between the response at Westgate and the one at Riverside. To me, I give credit to the attempt by the IG to narrow the gap between the operations of the National Intelligence Service and the operations of the police. Before he came into office, the gap was so wide that advice, as you have heard Jakoyo say, would be given to the police that required police action, and they do nothing. But thanks to the fact that the Boynet is formerly from National Intelligence Service, that gap has been reduced, and I want it to be reduced even more, so that information coming from the operations of the National Intelligence Service is acted on immediately. My second point is on the issue of removing soldiers from Somalia. My brother Cheriot, we are not saying there should be no presence of foreign military forces in Somalia. We need to secure Somalia. But the UN has already spoken to that. The standard is as follows. Forces from a country neighboring the country where we need such an operation are not, by UN standards, allowed to go into that country, because it is difficult for you to differentiate the presence of neighboring forces when they are there for peacekeeping operation and for purposes of occupation. The reason why they are not attacking Ugandans is because Ugandans don't share a border with Somalia. So the Ugandan forces are viewed in Somalia as being peacekeepers. But our forces are viewed as being occupation forces. So we want to tell the UN, thank you very much, they pay, I understand, 80% of the salary of our forces who are in Somalia. But thank you very much, let the Kenyan forces withdraw and replace them with forces from countries in Africa that do not border with Somalia.
I agree.
Once they do that, once they are on the border, they are then going to defend our border as per the Constitution. And what's more, we want to urge the Kenyan government not to attempt and reinvent the wheel. Already, if you go to the US, if you go to the European Union, they have instilled what they call smart borders. The smart borders are such that entry and exit of immigrants has a specific code, which in the EU they call it the Schengen code. It works so effectively that, amongst other things, is what Senator Wamatangi spoke to, that you are able to go through a border very fast and achieve maximum security results.
But the Schengen code is just like the East African community, as in it's a free, it's a free zone. You don't need a passport as well.
Yes,
yeah, and that has been debatable even right now.
Yes, the smart border has improved on the Schengen code. Has improved on it. I wanted to make my last point. There is a young man here who has sent me a response and said that Dr. Khalwale should not spew hate speech on national television. This is exactly part of the problem. The moment you try to speak to the reality that Al-Shabaab hides within the religion that we call Islam, people become emotional and they don't want the conversation to continue. Let me refer to him, and I want to read the quote from Imam Dahid. Imam Dahid says as follows. He's speaking to suicide bombers. He's saying, if suicide bombing was a shortcut to paradise, whoever convinced you would have blown himself up before you. The bloke who teaches young people that if you blow yourself up, you'll go to paradise, he is allowed to continue lying to these young people, knowing that these young people are unable to ask the simple question, kama sisi wote tungependa tuende katika paradiso, inakuwaje mwenye anasema ati tuende tukajiue, yeye mwenyewe hajajiua kwa sababu hata yeye anataka tuende paradiso. So these are the conversations we must hold boldly without fear, so that our young people can know that there is nothing like paradise through suicide bombing. And finally, the Christian churches and the nation. A time has come when we must teach in our primary schools, when we must teach in our secondary school the issue of terrorism, the issue of radicalization. Children must be taught. So that mtoto akiona mtu ameanza kumwambia hiyo maneno, anajua, this is what the teacher told me. This person who is telling me I'll recruit you and give you a salary and what have you, this is what the teacher told me. This is what my parents told me. You cannot stop talking. And if you think keeping quiet is a solution, then the problem is going to multiply. we have to talk about it. If people are saying to stop teenage pregnancies, we must talk about sex in schools, then it should also be right to say to stop Islamic fundamentalism and radicalization, then we must talk about terrorism in our schools. That does not mean you hate anybody.
Okay.
You're just being realistic.
Okay. So the question still of us occupying or having a military occupation in Somalia is still on the table. And I want to hear from Kimani Omatangi. Yeah, and I just want also to refer, before you continue, Kimani Omatangi, we had a report, I think, of 4 years back, this black and white report by the Journalist for Justice. If we may just remember, we can capture it a bit here. Black and white, and it said, I can just read briefly from it, because I think you alluded to, or it was Omatangi, was not really Omatangi, but Halwali was alluding to, actually it was Jakoyo, who said that some of the KDF officials were involved in charcoal and sugar smuggling as well. We can actually just pick it up if you have my director. This is the report, black and white. I think it was 5 years back, if we may just look at it briefly. And I'll just read a snippet of it, where they were on page 8, I think, where we have the executive summary. And I can just read it a bit there. They said, since Kenya invaded Somalia in October 2011, there has been little accounting for its activities, achievements and challenges both to the National Assembly and to the public at large. There has been little independent reporting on the invasion, with coverage mostly from journalists taken on guided tours by Kenya Defense Forces or with public relations videos paid for by the KDF, and now most recently a book. Moreover, censorship has played a role. Editors described to JFJ being summoned to meetings with top military brass and told that critical stories would be considered as undermining national security. And the UN monitoring group in Somalia and Eritrea mandated to report on violations of international laws and sanctions on Somalia, including the financing of Al-Shabaab and the targeting of civilians, has so far avoided looking too closely at the activities of the Kenyan military inside Somalia. With the death toll from Al-Shabaab attacks inside Kenya rising to over 400, Journalists for Justice felt that the task of examining whether Operation Linda Inchi is actually delivering was overdue. This study looks at the conduct KDF forces in 2 areas: 1, sugar smuggling and financial enabling of Al-Shabaab, and 2, human rights violation. And it goes on and on and on and on. And of course, if you may just read you can get the extensive nature of how this sugar smuggling and also the charcoal burning as well, or the charcoal business is actually critical and also being coupled with KDF as well. So the question is, are our soldiers also profiteering from the occupation in Somalia so far? And if at all, is this maybe the basis and the reason? And the stock excuse will be until peace is restored in Somalia, of which we do not know when. That's there in Somalia.
Debarl, probably on that question of whether our soldiers are profiteering, can I probably take it towards the end? But it's not one that I can answer to with a firm stand. But I just wanted to comment on what you've started with, and I think that was the broad base of that report on the effect and the usefulness of the presence of our soldiers in Somalia. And Debarl, to be fair to this discussion, we need to look a little back and ask ourselves what has been the history of our relationship between the two countries, between Kenya and Somalia. If you remember, during the shifter wars, during the times when we have had confrontations about our boundary with Somalia, including the boundary that is in the sea, and the perceived and sometimes imagined discussions on resources and minerals that are within the boundaries that would be sources of conflict between the two countries. And then once you bring in that aspect, you'll be asking, how then do you place the geopolitics? And my view I would be saying, I think this is certainly an issue that would require to be looked at multifacetedly, Debarl, because one, let us agree that even the history of our immigration between the two countries is one that is of curiosity. And if you look at, for example, the free flow that has been between the two countries and the extent of our boundary, one would be asking, what then is the difference between us and any other country? And I would be saying that at least for us to be certain that we are secure as a country in as far as the activities that are going on in Somalia, we cannot look at it just like any other country. We cannot look at it with the same lens. And let's also remind ourselves and ask ourselves, why was Ethiopia involved in a full-blown war with Somalia? And if you look at, again, the geopolitics and the geography itself of the two countries, you'll see that Ethiopia has probably one of the longest borders with Somalia, and then second, Kenya. And it is not unheard of. So that you find that the story of India and Kashmir and Pakistan, that the story of Mexico and the United States, that is also a reality here, that once you have a direct boundary with a country, then the issues that will be unique, just like you find if you scale down to your home, that you're most unlikely not to have a conflict with your neighbor who is a kilometer away. But your next door neighbor whom you share a boundary with, you're always going to be having issues because their cows came to graze in your shamba when you had planted your maize and so on. And so you scale now this up to country level and ask yourself, then would you be reasoning the way your neighbor who is a kilometer away will be reasoning? The answer is no. And so I believe the balance here is one that has got to be looked at. You see, what I'm saying is this, Debarl, that we may assess the value of the presence of our Kenyan forces in Somalia at face value just by reports that are coming. For example, they were selling charcoal, they were doing this, or there are suicide bombings and terrorist attacks. And then let's also ask ourselves, did the terrorist attacks in Kenya start when we went to Somalia? The answer is no. We lost Kenyans when the Somalis themselves, or rather terrorists actually bombed the American embassy here, even before in many other attacks.
But we're looking at the spate of attacks.
Let me
the regularity of attacks.
Sure. I'm alive to that fact, that the frequency of the attack, it has increased since then. You remember there was a time it even came down to bombing matatus and shooting people on the street. It went that bad. But the question is, in my view, given our position, given the vastness of our interests, given the number of Somalis who can freely flow in, and the reality, and remember, Debarl, if Trump himself is faced with such a monumental problem of controlling his border with Mexico, such that he has to bring his government to a standstill for people to understand that they have to help him to tackle such a problem, to give him money to build that wall. I mean, then you must understand the scale at which we are talking about our problem, because it's just not any other problem. You're talking about a boundary there where you can have a massive inflow of people. If you're talking about control, for example, and our interests now have multiplied, Debarl. If you go to Uganda now, look at the Somali community in Uganda. I've been there. Go to Rwanda, look at the Somali community there. Go to Tanzania. They are a minuscule of what we have. We have a vast community of Somalis here in Eastleigh, in South B, wherever, all over. And so our interest, our interaction, the way we handle them has just got to be different. And so that's what I'm saying. Let us not reason, probably at that, I would say, but in quotes and fairly, with an aloof approach whereby we think that we can just standardize. We have to look uniquely at where we are. I believe, at least us having an ear inside Somalia, having some sense of control and participation on what is happening inside Somalia will vastly be to our advantage. But barring the fact that we should not, and I believe it is time to scale down for that matter. The full-blown presence and attacks and whatever, that can be scaled down. But our presence there, you go ask the United States, why do they still keep their base in Saudi Arabia? and it is costly. Why do they still today keep their base in Japan? Full military. Why do they have it in Djibouti? Why did China come to build a multi-billion base in Djibouti just the other day? You know, it is a question of seeing how do you protect your interests, your wealth, your economy, your people, and you have to be strategic.
Thank you.
So I believe when we're looking at it, let's be more broad-based in thinking about the usefulness, the value of the presence of our soldiers in Somalia. It can't just boil down to us going for military exercises there. It cannot just boil down to profiteering of our soldiers.
Right.
It has got a lot much more to it.
All right, let's get granular with the issue of private guards are also being armed as well. But before we do that, we can actually just read some of our tweets that are coming through. We have Obunga Apamo saying that how this got their way into the heart of the countries, into the country shows how much corruption has eaten our security. How does a gun travel from Somalia to Nairobi? Also, we have Abdi Rizak saying, arming security guards won't stop terrorist attacks. Solution, intelligence sector must up its game. On top of that, there has to be a platform that will bring the government and the community leaders together in this fight against terrorism. Also, we have Kiprotich Kivin saying Ethiopia troops are part of AMISOM in Somalia and no incidents of attack. I will disagree with you. That is because we are neighbors. I think he was alluding to what you were saying, Honorable Cheriot. He says also, I beg to differ on arming private security guards in Kenya. It is not our norm and culture. We might be preparing to dry ourselves on the matter of security. Let the government employ more security personnel and provide them with all necessary resources. Also, we have Ocheng Henry saying, that's like an insult, Honorable Bidio. The soldiers are not cowards, he says. How can you give out your life freely to the terrorists in the name of being brave? They know how to do their job. Give them a break. Congratulations to them for the good work. I can't remember what you said about cowards, but he's just responding that you'll maybe. And also Felix King saying, today I loved how you candidly, that is Bonnie Tetezi, saying, addressed the religion and the Al-Shabaab thing. And we have also Dikush saying Senator Matangi is mesmerized with advanced technology when abroad. Yet a simple technology of biometrics capture for e-passports necessitates a long trip to Nyayo House, even for many of us abroad not served by a service center. Biometrics too. This is what Dikush is saying from abroad. And also we have Boutros Ghali saying this idea should be looked into before put into action, because this is going to increase criminal cases since the security guards are ill-paid. And they're ill-paid and they'll use the guns to rob people. Senator Cheriot.
I'm not sure whether to draw comparisons with other countries anymore, because I, just like Wamatangi, may be accused of being mesmerized with technology. With technology.
I mean, but probably it's just because you are just out of the election, you can forgive the viewer, because maybe he's still, you know, in that hangover of the election. Biometrics.
Okay. No, he is not mesmerized, but because he lives abroad. He lives abroad, actually, Dukush.
No, I think his point is even just to get biometrics for an e-passport, we haven't gotten there.
Yes.
So we're still far way off to suggest that we can have security solutions to handle by use of ICT. Well, that remains to be debated. But to the point that I wanted to raise, you know, Debarl, this issue of providing private solutions to public problems are signs of a failed state. And I don't think Kenya as a country should ever get to that point. It should be the aspiration of any government to ensure that all facets and matters of society that are critical to its citizens are handled by the state itself. Matters to do with healthcare, education, security. And it's only in failed countries where, for example, you find that let's say any of those three that I've mentioned are now left to the hands of private providers. And as a country, we should never for 1 second imagine that we can be arming the security guards. The aspiration should be to ensure that we have such a safe country that we even reduce the number of police officers that are out there by use of modern solutions. That's why I was saying earlier that we shouldn't be discouraged from aspiring and benchmarking with countries that have succeeded in doing this. Modern cities, Dubai, Singapore, you can be there for months and you will never see, you don't even know how a police officer in that country looks like. That should be where we are aspiring to, but not retracting back to a point of saying, let us arm security guards. When it becomes difficult, we say, okay, now everyone just buy a gun and defend yourself. I mean, it's extremely primitive. Many of the crimes that we are reading about, Debarl, lately, we are told are being committed by armed police officers while they are off duty. They pick that AK-47 that they are supposed to be using at work, and they have been found in crime scenes. We have seen, we've read in newspapers, we've seen on our news many a times where police officers are actually confronting their colleagues who are on an armed robbing spree. Now imagine for a second what will happen in this country if we arm private security guards who are earning less. Yet we know that our psyche as a people and as a nation is that you make money by all means. Everything else follows later. Therefore, it will be extremely unfortunate if we take that route. What we should be proposing, and one of the things that we need to do as a country, is to ensure that each and every time, you know, unfortunately, we have this habit of investing so heavily in matters to do, for example, with security. We have, for example, these Nairobi, Mombasa, and Kisumu CCTV cameras that have wired up the entire city. Yet, each and every time something happens that we need to rely on those technology to unravel for us what happened, we are told for some reason, oh, it had been switched off, it wasn't running, somebody forgot, yet nobody faces trial for sabotaging. Remember when the MP for one of the constituencies from where Matangi comes from was killed here in Uhuru Highway. No, Kenyatta Avenue. And we tried to say, okay, can you retrieve the CCTV footage, because that area is under CCTV, just to see what truly happened. We were told it's not available. Somebody had either it wasn't functioning at that particular time. Yet we invested, I think, 15 billion shillings, Kenya shillings in that particular project. It's really unfortunate. We should be serious, and to the men and women that are charged with implementing and executing such projects, you're failing your country. Let us ensure that systems work. But going back to arming, the more we arm people, look at America, what is happening. The trouble that they continue to have because of proliferation of arms and ensuring that everybody has a gun in their home. I think, to me, the ideal is ensuring that systems work, that you do not have to be armed to be secure. That is where we should be aspiring to as a country.
Right, Jacomi Dio.
I hope the president has listened to Senator Cheriot. Refuse. You don't need more guns in the hands of private people, because the chaos that we will, it would be too impossible to reverse. Please don't give, let the guns be in the arms of trained personnel, properly trained, and we are not lacking of it. We are one of the most armed states, other than corruption. We are a good country. We are doing so well. Please don't reverse it. Let me ask you, Debarl. You know that guy who was, I saw him on NTV with an assault rifle. What can a security officer do against an assault rifle? That is a big rifle which is meant for the bush. The guy who they said was a mechanic in 2 shops, what can you do with a pistol against him? He was going to kill you. Anyway, he meant to come and kill. Let us address the root causes of why we are fighting these people. I am so happy that this panel today, we have agreed that we have no business being in Somalia. And I disagree with my good Senator Wamatangi.
But are they collectively agreed? I think
I think the three of us have agreed.
Is he on the same page as well?
As usual, Wamatangi would be on the opposite.
I mean,
we have no business.
Because to lead, you have to be different. When it calls you to stand with the fact and principle,
let him finish. Let him finish.
But please finish.
You know, Debarl, yes. What would you, as a leader, if you were Senator Halwale or if you were Cheriot, what would you tell Kenyans as the reason why we are in Somalia. Do you know these guys are paid 80% by the United Nations? Then we are financing a war which is not our war in Somalia. Come back home. Let us protect our borders. You remember how we went into Somalia? It's because a woman, an Italian woman, was abducted in Lamu. The law says, our constitution says, before we go to war, Parliament must approve. And we never approved nothing going into Somalia. There's no resolution from Parliament that took us to Somalia. Never been. We said Operation Linda Inchi. Inchi, we have our border. It is defined between us and Somalia. Why are we trading in charcoal in Somalia? Bring our troops back. They are in harm's way. Bring them back. This is an American war. Let the Americans go and fight in Somalia. It is not our thing. Bring our people back. And I don't think there is any definition that somebody of this panel's caliber can tell Kenyans to justify why we are fighting in Somalia. We are there, and let me tell you, they have never refused. The UN has a report which we canvassed here at Debarl. How Kenyan senior police officers, military officers, are trading in charcoal. Why are we in Kismayo? Kismayo is too far from here. Why are we there? But we are there because it makes economic sense to people's pockets. And personally, I want to plead with His Excellency Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. Withdraw our troops back to the border. The border is nearly 3,000 kilometers.
Thank you.
All around it. Let us protect our border. Yeah. But you cannot tell me that guns can come up to Riverside Drive and no police saw them, no soldiers saw them. Why are we fighting? It is not our war. Let the Americans, let them kill Americans, not our people. Let them kill Americans. This is their war. Yeah.
Let's hear from Honorable Khalwale on this as well.
I think, having agreed with my two colleagues that we should pull out of Somalia, it doesn't mean that the mere act that we have pulled out of Somalia makes us secure. There are things we must do internally. Yes. And to me, much as I don't agree with me on this one, I still persuade Kenyans that when we say we arm security guards, we are not saying it be done haphazardly. These will be guards at strategic positions. And the people who will be armed will have been vetted in advance. And one hopes that arming that officer, you are not arming him to keep the firearm 24/7. He only uses the firearm when he is on duty. This fear that very many firearms will be in the wrong hands, forget it. It is even the case now. I was shocked, really shocked, when I met a politician called Bogo. And he told me, I've been in there, I'm now going to rest. It was around me later on in the night. I'm now going to rest. We are in control. I thought the guy was a police officer. Then he told me, you appear not to know me. I am Bogo. And the guy was fully dressed, boots, whatnot, fatigue, like police officers. And he was having a heavy weapon. That's a civilian. That's a civilian. So it's already happening.
That's criminal.
It's already happening. So let us manage how the security guards would have firearms. And you know why, Cheriot, my dear? The reason why the casualties were low at Dusit, amongst other reasons, was A, the car that was carrying these terrorists couldn't go beyond the barrier. So they came from the barrier running to go and reach the hotel. If the police officers, the guards at the barrier were armed, they would have engaged them, and the results would have been slightly different. Secondly, There were foreign security experts. How they happened at that hotel is just God sent, who actually helped the situation. One of them was a British citizen. You saw yesterday of how he had to leave the country in a hurry because now the terrorists have realized that they can recognize him. It was becoming a risk for him. My final point on this point is the issue raised by Wamatangi, the Somali. You know, we should not forget that Somalis are Kenyans by right. And therefore, when we speak to the word Somalis, we are playing into the hands of the Al-Shabaab. They want to engage Kenyan communities against each other. At Riverside, I saw a mixture of Arabic, Somali, young officers who were in the GSU, and they were defending Kenyans. Yeah. So we have to manage it such that we take advantage of the fact that Somalis and Arabs are Kenyans by right by doing the following, for example. If, for example, there is a mosque where radicalization speeches are being made, it will be so easy to take a Kenyan Arab, a Kenyan Somali, who will sit in that place, tape the speech, come out and be evident to arrest the imam who is doing these things.
On that note, Kalwale, even as we're winding up, we have Abdi Habat, who's actually taking special umbrage with some maybe of a comment that you've said.
Yes.
He says, Kalwale and Wamatangi, I'm a Somali born and brought up in Kenya.
Yeah.
I'm not anyone's guest and will not accept to be treated differently. Go look for the criminals. They're out there. And then he says, you two, I think this is a typo, you two are tribal bigots as well. This is what he thinks. This is Abdi Habat. Maybe just to clarify on what you're really saying briefly before we wind up.
Yeah, I've already clarified what he is saying.
Thank you.
But I just want to appeal to him that the conversation has to start now. What I am doing is that I'm urging us to speak so that the Somalis are speaking to the Luos.
Thank you.
The Luos are speaking to them. Everybody is speaking so as to corner the terrorists who want to hide in our tribes, want to hide in our religions.
Thank you. Wamatangi, finally, and then we'll give closing remarks. Wamatangi, briefly.
Yes, Debarl. Could you remind me how many things I've been accused of?
Okay.
No, anyway, let me just make my comments on the topic itself, and that's on arming our private security, and you know, our viewers and my colleagues here. If you look at the problem that the United States is in, and it has been a perennial problem on gun ownership. It is because they probably long time ago started with what we are trying to do now. Make it such a free for all that anybody can have a gun, and eventually it runs out of control. I believe that arming our private security guards has got to be probably the last alternative. Right now, we have to relook at it. Secondly, so that I can move very quickly, is on that issue that that gentleman has commented about, on my comment about Kenyan Somalis, and I think he's misunderstood what I said. I mean, you know, we have Kenyans of Somali origin who are born here and who came here a long time ago. We have Kenyan Somalis themselves who are Kenyan, but we still have a free flow of business, of activities between Kenya and Somalia, and you cannot deny that we have interests which are mutual, that even the Kenyan Somalis themselves, and even the ones who have emigrated, some of them have relatives there. And so, unless we want to live in denial, we have to admit that there has to be management of the activities that occur between the two communities. And that's what he said. We cannot just act like as though we don't have a large Somali community, whether it is Kenyan, whether it is those who have emigrated. As having our eye in there, as having some knowledge of what is happening, including some control and a sense of participation, is very, very important. Now, lastly, is on I think is on what was mentioned. Can I just make it probably a very brief one?
Brief one. The director is on my case.
How has technology affected us? Debarl, again, we can't live in denial. There are lots of things that have changed since we have innovated, introduced technology in a few things, including, as our friend there said, including even in voting. I mean, you saw the voting that was being done in Congo, and there was a guy there with a sack, and people were coming to put in their ballots. At least we've moved from there. We're better off. And so we have to admit that technology works. Automation is the way to go. It is only that it is sabotaged by those who intend to sabotage.
Thank you. 10 seconds, closing remarks, 10 seconds today. Senator Cherocho.
I still want to urge the President to keenly look into this issue of religious fundamentalism. With the Islam, because we've read about certain mosques that have been marked out to be recruitment cells for these organizations, ensure that we have a plan for it. And for the Christian religion, Debarl, I had argued earlier that even within the Christian circles, there are certain practices that are not in tandem with good religion.
Thank you. Giacomo, 10 seconds.
Debarl, I saw an NTV expose of the people who actually masterminded this thing in Riverside. They were in Nyeri. They're not Somalis. Let's bring back our troops. Let us stop the occupation of Somalia.
Thank you. Halwale, finally.
Mr. President, sir, the soldiers who are in Somalia are not happy. They are doing it because it is a duty. A boy from my family called Oscar Hayati, an officer, having served in Wajir for 4 years, when he finally got transferred back home in Trans Nzoia, there was a party I have never seen in my home. The boy, so I wondered, what is the party about? But Oscar has finally been transferred from Wajir.
But Wajir is Kenya.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is on the... Those are the... People are afraid.
Yeah. All right. Of course, this is, we cannot really talk exhaustively about this, and I want to thank your panelists this morning, and also your rush of tweets that are coming through here, fast and furious. Just read a few of them as I'm winding up. Bona Director, Mark Rumaz is saying, for the first time, I fully agree with Midio that we should pull out of Somalia. Let's secure our borders. Also, Paul Tanui saying, on religion and Al-Shabaab, you nailed it. We are not saying Islam's Al-Shabaab, but there are some elements of Al-Shabaab in Islamic religion. If once heard, or if you once heard the Let Abu Rogo speeches, we have also Atswetse Rasanga saying, the question we need to answer are, the questions we need to answer are, what if we elected leaders funded by terrorists or security officers to compromise intelligence? Who are the cartels smuggling through Kismayo, Garissa, and into the country, right? Quite a probing question there also from him. And finally, we have Obunga Apamo saying the first shot at terrorism is reducing radicalization. Religion shouldn't be a hiding place for terrorists. Muslim is a peaceful religion, but radicalization is unacceptable. Right, those are your rush of tweets. Thank you very much for your valid company. My name is Debarl.